George turned local news into appropriate cartoons for each edition of the Bunyip for many years, and he formed an important part of the town's history through his tenure as a local artist. There weren't too many local identities who escaped George's pencil. Whether sportsman, politician or hard-working locals, all were drawn with respect. Arriving in Gawler 40 years ago, George fell in love with the smaller town aspect of the place and found comfort in drawing his cartoons for the local newspaper while also connecting with the Willaston Football Club, while he says reflects his personality. And he keeps in touch with how his Willaston boys are going, because he used to be a junior umpire there as well, so he's touched a few footballs and bounced them, so, and that's no longer a thing, is it? You're not going to, there's no more bouncing the ball, it's thrown, anyway, that's another story. I could waffle on. George has won numerous awards for his drawings, including SA Press Awards as Cartoonist of the Year. He was a prize winner at an international cartoon display in Portugal. And George has worked on web design and as consultant designer in a wide range of organisations, including the SA Museum and Library. There is so much more to George's resume, including working in hundreds of schools, including a couple of stints in Sussex, England. And that doesn't even touch his painting prowess. So with no further ado, please welcome George Aldridge.
Oh God, I'm terrified. Well, I had originally booked Snoop Dogg in to do this interview, but I charge more. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Heather. Thank you again for appearing here tonight to listen to me ramble and try and... There's a thread through it. If you can find it, you're better than me. So there's images that are going to come up. I'm going to talk about a bit of my history. A special part of course, is Gawler. And it's lovely to be here tonight to see a lot of familiar faces, and it's a joy. What isn't the joy is the amount of traffic I've noticed in Gawler in the last 24 hours. I'll take that off. I'm going to go through a little bit of my past history. There's going to be some images about... That one is shocking. It scares me. No, it's all right.
All right,
that's right. Okay, that's better. And I'll talk about the people who have been important to me, the places that have been important to me, and I still hang off that. When I went, sort of the whole process of preparing a talk, I just felt this is something really quite special, and there's only about 200,000 things that are missing in this talk, and people. That is my mum and dad, who were very special in my upbringing. I was born and bred in Beulah Park in Nord, and we were on the poor side of town. Also, my full name is George Granger Aldridge. My connection is through Percy Granger. For those people who don't know, Percy Granger, one of the great composers, Australian composers of his time, and sadly still not really well known. He was the man that composed English country gardens. Dum, da, da, dum, dum, da, 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 da. Anyway, I grew up in the shadow of Percy, and hence I was lucky to claim that my middle name as Granger. I went to Marrickville Primary School, which I loved. I then went to Nord High School, which I didn't love quite as much. My history of Nord High School was, I got there and thought, well, this is different. So I went from 1B, 2C, 3D, 4E. I was very much a non-academic person. Most of my end years of the Nord High School were in the art room with a great person called Glenn Peake, who was a returned serviceman, spent most of his war years in New Guinea. But he was a great, great teacher. One of those people you just wrap your arms around. I still think about him. And my end teacher in high school was a guy called Dick Lang, who was in 4E, who was one of the greatest teachers and inspirational people. And he took us gang of kids. We were like stealing bikes and, robbing things, and not graffiti. They didn't have graffiti then. But Dick Lang believed in us, and he put us in a bus and 2 four-wheel drives, and he took us to the Flinders Ranges. I'd never been past Jepp's Cross, and his journey and took us into the Flinders was one of the most inspirational parts of my life, and still remains that. And to be given that gift as a young student with all the rest of the rat bags was something exceptional. And it was the first place that we'd driven down we did a follow-up in the 4-wheel drive, driven down through this creek, the washout, and down at the bottom of the washout was a sturt desert pea, which I saw and thought, my God, that is the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life, a flower. And I photographed it and did some drawings of it, and he said, no, they're very special, they're the state emblem. So we got back in the 4-wheel drive and we drove up out of the creek, and there was a carpet of thousands of them. And I went, yeah, okay, I love this place. That was my great love affair, the beginning of my great love affair with the Flinders Ranges. I'll get back to that after. I left high school and I became a window dresser and a ticket writer for a place called Scott's Menswear in Rundle Street in Adelaide. And it was a street then, not a mall. And my job was to do window dressing and ticket writing and sell really, really terrible suits, hire terrible suits to men getting married. And that was my job. And you'd say, you look fantastic in that suit. And I mean, God, you look awful in that suit. That was my job. That was my job. And we used to do, in the end days of my time at Scott's Menswear, we had dummies in the store windows, which we had a barber shop upstairs at Scott's Menswear. So I gathered a whole lot of sort of clippings and hair, and I glued pubic hair on the dummies in the windows, which I thought would never be found. They were found the morning I was to leave, and I got a very dishonourable discharge from Scott's Menswear. I haven't told that story for a long while. Probably never told it. Anyway, then after that, I had a dear friend who said, George, you've got to apply to go to the South Australian School of Art. And I didn't know much about it at that time, but I could get in on just a portfolio of artwork. So I then did an application and I got into the South Australian School of Art, thinking my other family members had joined the South Australian Railways, but to go to the art school was regarded as, from some people, you have to be a poofter if you go to art school. I wasn't, and I still am. But it's that whole thing about the change of life. I suddenly met all these lovely people around me, all the bohemians and the wild people, and it was a gathering of some of the greatest and talented people who I still know now, who are out there still doing it. It was an exceptionally splendiferous, exhilarating place, and working with some of the great artists, Annie Newmarch, and Annette Bazor, these great people who were presenting their work and saying, this is what it is, this is this whole new culture now. I had no clue, not a clue at all, not a clue at all. So, and those friendships still remain today. It was the start of my great journey into the arts and still having that strong connection with the Flinders Ranges of South Australia. So from here, the big journeys begin as a freelancer, because when I was still at art school and moving around, mind you, the first job I got leaving art school with a diploma in fine art painting was a house painter. It was natural in those days. So, and I liked it. But they didn't like the colours I like painting, so that's all right. So I worked as an artist, illustrator, designer, and a teacher for the following. It's only a short list. These are some of the people, and it doesn't cover it all. The education department, hundreds of schools, as Judy would know. I worked in schools, I love working with kids. Drawing, cartooning was a natural sort of connection for kids. I worked in primary industries, the Teachers Union, Family Planning Association, the Gerard Aboriginal Community, the Mining and Quarrying Industry, the Penola Hydrocarbon Centre, National Parks, Northern Regional Development Board, SA Health, Macquarie University, SA Jockey Club Journal, that was different, Northern Skillshare, Country Arts Trust, SAPOL, Come Out, Festival Centre, the ABC, The Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, which I still have strong connections with, Adelaide City Council, Salisbury City Council, United Trades and Labour Council, the Riverland Horticultural Council, CSIRO, the State Library, the Law Council of Australia, the Fossil Forest Arts SA Project, Rockford Wines, Gomersall Wines, Adelaide Footy Club. We won't go too far with that one. AP Winelands, where I worked on a camel project, which was an exceptional time to work with an Aboriginal community up in the AP Winelands, where we were mustering camels for production and for transport and in the industry. So our job was to go out and muster wild camels. So you had what they call is the coacher camels, where they brought camels in, wild ones, and we'd break them in. And I've done that on a couple of occasions and broke them in, and they use them to take back out to the scrub. And you put a bunch of coacher camels out in the desert, and they'll attract the wild camels. So my coacher camel was named George, which was a great honour. And they said, "It's funny, George, you attract a lot of camels, wild camels." And I did worry about that a bit, but anyway. And there's many, many more jobs that I've worked with over the years, and it's always been my art, my drawing, my painting, my illustration, which has been that thread through all that time. And it's a great joy, and that's preparing for this, as I went through the lists and the piles of drawings, and it's just been almost another enlightenment to sort of, think, okay, this is where I am now. So go on, now that's it. We got on really well together, the Queen and I. As you can see, I was a lot taller than her. And these are just some of the things I put together. It's to bring humour, and I send out to people, and to give joy, and keep us laughing. It's the most critical point, especially in our current world. We need to smile, we keep laughing, and that's to have some humour. Humour is a really integral part of this. Go on, Paul, that's scary. This is from Arnie Schwarzenegger, who has a couple of my drawings, and the story behind the Arnie Schwarzenegger story was that my son was working overseas in Canada at the time, and his 21st birthday was coming up, but I was leaving and he was going to the Channel Islands. So I said to him before I left, I said, "Look, I know I can't be here for your 21st, but tell me, what would you like for your 21st birthday?" And he said, "Dad," and he was a great fan of Arnie's, he said, "I'd like a birthday card from Arnie." And I went, "Oh, that's all right, mate." And he said, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "The bet's on." I said, "I can do that." And he said, I get it. You give us a good bottle of scotch. And so I wrote a letter to Arnie. He was the governor of California at the time. And I sent it over to him, this drawing. Arnie's a big fan of Australia. He's also a big fan of kangaroos, R.M. Williams. He has all that gear. He sneaks in and out of Australia when people don't even know. So I sent it off to Arnie, and I got a beautiful letter back, and I said, to send to Arnie, but, can you do this for me? And he said, "Not a problem." He said, "I love it, the fact you have that love for your son." And so he sent over, Jack was working the Channel Islands in the resort, and the people at the resort said, "Jack," and he was working in the kitchen, said, "Jack, you've got to come to the front desk." And he said, "No, there's a parcel here for you." And he said, "I'll get it after work, after my shift." And then they said, no, you've got to come to the front desk now. And there was this huge package. It's just not a normal package, but it had this big seal from the governor of California on it. And Jack being my son, and they're all waiting, sort of going, and he just walks in and goes, "Oh, it's just from Arnie," and went to walk out. That's my boy. And he had in his beautiful framed photograph in glass with, "Jack, happy 21st birthday from your old mate Arnie." And got a set of gold cufflinks with the seal of the governor of California, which he wears with great pride. So I got a late night call after that, and return charge call, of course. And I said, "Hello, Jack," and he said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Mate, if you put the challenge up, you can do it. You can do anything." And then I said, don't worry, wait till the next birthday. And he said, I want a quilt made by Osama bin Laden. So, hence the story. Now, some of these are sort of works that appear, and I'll describe a little bit, but that's a lot of work I do. I still work for the Northern Territory Cartoonist Association as a cartoonist for 10 years now in conference work. So these are put up and meant to humour and bring some sort of shed a different light on the cattle industry, which I still have a very strong connection to. All right, now it gets really interesting, hopefully. I joined the South Australian exhibition team, South Australian Museum exhibition team in 1980. And it was probably the biggest learning times of my life when I learned so much in terms of science, natural science. So I was a designer of exhibitions, and we used to do, I designed building dinosaurs. You know, it's one of those things you get up in the morning and go back to the dinosaur, you know. And painting dioramas, visiting lots of schools. I took, you know, time to go out and do the school stuff. And I also used to take out live snakes to the schools. And I had this particularly beautiful snake called Boris, which was a carpet python. And it was one of those snakes you can let the kids handle and touch and feel and help get them over that terrible fear of snakes. It was just a lovely thing to do. And Boris was very popular. But I left, I think it was Campbelltown Primary School, and we used to take them in a Hessian bag sort of thing, carry him on the front seat, you put Boris in, and off you'd go back to the museum. Well, this one day, Boris happened to get out of the bag while I was driving. I pulled up at the lights, and Boris gets wrapped around the steering wheel of this Subaru. So I'm going, Boris, and you know, you've got to be gentle. In the meantime, a council vehicle rolls up with a dual cab truck alongside the lights with me, and they look down, and I'm sitting there pulling this carpet python off the steering wheel. That would have been an interesting conversation at cuppa time, I can tell you. And I did things, we used to collect dead whales and whale heads and skeletal material off the beaches right across the state. And whale heads were good because you had to have a certain propensity to sort of not breathe when you were there or smell, because the smell of a dead whale is quite phenomenal. And we'd chop off the whale head and flens it off, which means takes all the skin off, then put it in somebody would come down from local council, it was in down south of Mount Gambier, and the poor council bloke who arrived in a front end loader to pick up the whale head threw up within about 2 minutes of being there. And that was, yeah, we had the job, but we got used to it. But you couldn't, the whale oil, the smell of rotting whale oil is quite, you know, I should have brought a bottle just to and we did things, and turtles and all things that, we were known as the Dead Zoo, the South Australian Museum, because we collected dead animals. And the other thing I did was a lot of fossil work, and up in Birdsville, the track, and up in that desert country, Cooper Basin, Cooper Creek, just fascinating work. We're sitting on your arse basically and sifting through 2 tonne of dirt and find a small spine of something rather and think, well, that's pretty interesting. But work with great people, lovely people, all science-based people. And my son Jack, I haven't told about him yet, he's about to arrive, was just the biggest learning experience for anybody, kid, and we had lots of volunteers to be in amongst that country and that landscape and finding stuff around where we were digging was old ocean, it was old swamp. And you see it now, and you can't really quite imagine up off the Birdsville track that it was actually swamp. Crocodiles, turtles, and all that. It was a fascinating country. All right, during this period, I moved to Gawler after part my way through the museum stuff, and with my partner Brenda Kerr, a school teacher, school principal, and a much loved school principal, and a very astute, clever, dynamic woman, still is. And I love the country feel of Gawler. I absolutely adored it. This town had such a lovely swing about it, and nice people. Yeah, all wearing shoes like this. Good on you, Paul. Come on.
Timing.
So it was the Bunyip. There's a place called the Bunyip. I do who calls the paper the Bunyip, you know? Gawler did. And then, of course, I met the Barnetts. And the Barnetts and the Barnetts and more cartooning. And I loved the regular, just, John Barnett was the editor at the time, dear John. And I used to take him flowers. And I used to say, nobody's ever brought me flowers. And that was John, and he was there. But to their credit, they kept me on. And it was over 35 years I was cartooning for the Bunyip. And I loved its local folk. A lot of you are here, and still much connected to. And I said to one bloke, his name was Scotty Fraser, a publican at the Exchange Hotel. And I said, Scotty, what's the rap band club in Gawler? He said, the Donnybrooks, mate. And I went, sounds like my sort of team. So, hence my time, not just with the Donnybrooks, but with the Exchange Hotel, with Di, and Shelley Fraser, who was, you know, it was my other office. And probably spent far too much time there. But colourful characters. Gawler was, and hopefully still is, full of them. Brian Marnie, the man and his dog, who was just the most gentle, delightful bloke, who used to often see in the Exchange and have a chat with him, then he'd fall asleep on the bar, and then he had the biggest hands I've ever seen on a man. I don't know when any people say, he had huge hands, and
I'm looking for it.
Are you looking for it? There's Barney, where we going? Sorry, Paul.
I don't know where you put it. I'm looking for Brian. Oh, I'm going through them all.
That's all right. No, don't matter.
I can't find Brian.
It's going to be a long journey, this one.
I'll go back to where I was.
Okay. Brian Marnie, and of course the Donnybrooks, and I got to the great privilege of meeting a lot of the Donnies. One was Speedy Cleland, who was a plumber, and don't get nervous, Speedy. Because I looked around town, we had a new house, and I said, I needed to find a good plumber. We couldn't find anybody, so I just rang Speedy then. But Speedy also was one of those characters you think, yeah, no, he's out there, he kept quiet. He dug holes and dealt with a lot of shit, basically. And he was also, probably not many of you know this, he was a top footballer, Speedy Cleland. And many AFL clubs approached him to clean their drains. And, but Speedy also, I live in a house up at Glen Oak Station which doesn't have any running water or flushing toilets. Doesn't have much at all, basically. Speedy came up there in one weekend, not a bloody thing was done. So ring him up. No, he's retired now. So I was doing umpiring, and I got to, with all that time, I got to work in some great schools, and with Judy Gillett-Ferguson up in Williamstown, is it what, Judy, and husband Brian, Dave Ferguson, a canny Scotsman who worked at the Australia Post. Was that right, Judy? And he had this amazing ability to remember postcodes and stuff. And if I'd be holding a piece of timber and I'd say, that's good wood, he'd say, that's 5034. He'd know anything. When I'm driving a Nord today, oh, that's 5067. He was a remarkable bloke. And of course the princes and all the people of the Bunyip, Ashcroft, all the gang, Timmy Freeland, just a beautiful bunch of people. So TJ Lucas, there was just such a gorgeous group of people. This is one of the things, having moved out of Gawler, I miss, but what you have to do is just translate that to a town like Hawker, and you do. Then you build your community around you up there. And that's what one Brenda Kerr was very good at, and that's her ability to embrace children, families, and all of it. And they still talk about Brenda up there with great love and affection. And then I down here, and then I went to the printer's room, which Paul put me up to. which is the printer's room above the Bunyip, which was it's a piece of history in its own right. It's a museum, and I spent a lot of time hanging out there, hanging on the balcony actually, and I'd see somebody walk across the other side of the Murray Street, and I'd call out, "Hey, stupid!" and seeing if who turned around. You know, it's the things that get your laughs out of, you know. And at that time also Baz and Gabby up at Gomersall Wines, who now have I think a really wonderful collection of paintings. There's always a great support of what I did in terms of painter, and has still followed me right through of all my work in the Flinders. I'm still a chronic painter. I paint big canvases, and a lot of you would be aware of that, some of you. Then of course along comes, in 1985 was Jack, my darling son, and I worked at South Australian Museum for a while, but then I became a home dad. I tossed all the public service in, and I'm getting a bit tired of me anyway. I was doing cartoons, which I was getting into a lot of trouble for with the public service. And then after some years, I left Gawler and I moved to the Flinders Rangers, to Hawker. And Brenda was then became principal of Hawker Area School, which was a pretty dynamic stuff, and she was very adept at understanding what was required, and she was a drama teacher, so she just shifted the whole thinking, not so much away from sport, but gave them another alternative, which was drama. Brenda was brilliant at it. I take my hat off and I still acknowledge her great tribute in terms of education, and a lot of those kids now still talk about Brenda and what she gave those kids as another course in life. I did some school murals, and I also worked in the Adjumutna community, and one dear friend of mine, who some of you will remember, is a chap called Joe McKenzie, Adjumutna man, who I worked with a lot, and we used to do little tours. I organised an event up in Blinman called the Cook Out Back event, which was a cooking competition in camp ovens. And we got a town of 18 to over 1,000 people that came from all over the country and the world, part of Tasting Australia. So Joe McKenzie was part of this organisation, this group, who I said, no, you've got to be here for when these journos come through. And we travelled around in a vehicle, and Joe was talking words and giving, you know, that's Warrachi, that's, you know, Wurdu. And we got to kangaroos, and they were all taking notes. They were doing this, and he said, "That's red kangaroo. That's Wanja, and grey kangaroo is Udu." And then a euro came along, and he said, and they said, "Oh, and what's that?" He said, "That's a euro." And they're going, "Oh, okay." And he spelled, you know, and then he said, "But if you look carefully, and listen. When a euro goes close to a acacia tree and has a piss, you know what they call that?" And they went, no, that's called European. So this stage I'm listening to, I go, Jesus mate, what's next? He was like that, and he just had that humour, sense of humour that carried through everything, and it was, yeah. So part of the journey into Hawker and I also became an AMBO, a volunteer AMBO, which I loved, and it was part of the your joy of sort of getting in with the community and taking part. And interesting, so I went to, and at that stage I was travelling a bit, and I went to England, and I was staying, funnily enough, in a town called Barnet, and I was living there, and every morning I used to go up to this local store, and a sort of Indian family, and we'd talk, and next minute we know, we hear this kerfuffle, and there's a car that's overturned in the main street, the high street of Barnet, and it's little fires come out of the engine, so some smart person has come out and extinguished the fire, and I'm watching this from the footpath and going, oh, and then they start to rock this car, trying to put it back on its wheels, and I said to him, where's the driver? And he said, she's still in the car. There's this elderly woman, and she's in the car, and some bloke is trying to get in the back window to help her out. And he cut himself, so he's cactus. And I said, no, and I sprung into AMBO action, being a I know everything. And they were still trying to rock this car, and I run up to this group, and I said, everybody just stop. So you've got to stop here now. You can't do this. And I said, I'm an ambulance officer from Australia. And this little pommy bloke goes, "Cool, you got here quick, Gov." That's a true story. So, it's one of those lovely things, and stories in life that you hang on to. Yeah. And it's also a bit about the British sense of humour, really. How are we going, Paul? Now that's me at museum days, that's me skinning a giraffe. And the giraffe had died at the zoo, hence why we're also called the dead zoo. So we take the skin off, and that was all preserved. Then we cut we flens off the body, the structure, and all the skin you put in big tubs, and we took back to the zoo, to the lions, who would have been going, home. This is like home cooked meat. So that's we had a place at Bolivar, which the museum still has, and it's an interesting place, and where they macerate skeletal stuff. The place stinks. You know, you work at the museum, you have to get used to the smell, and one of the places out of where the big maceration pots are, they throw stuff in. They put what they call a domestic beetle in that eats all the flesh off the skeletal stuff. And there's crap everywhere, and yet you've got it. I love it. Outside of one of the buildings, there's a little map that says "Wipe your feet." And this is the Punch magazine out of London. That's 1849, which is a magazine about humour and cartooning. I fell in love with it from the moment I saw it, and I followed it for years. I actually went to London. I did one cartoon for Punch in golly, and after that it sold to Muhammad Al Fayed, who turned it into a piece of shit basically. And it's sad. It had so much history about it. It is one of the greatest magazines. And if you look carefully, there's a really odd image just there. You work that one out. It's a sort of phallic sort of thing. But anyway, I might go down that path. All right, so
Who's that?
This is not Freddie Teague, who was the first person I ever met in my first journey into the Flinders Ranges, and his son John now runs it. It was a servo when you drive up and they'd go, check your oil, where you going, you know, driveway service. And Freddie became a really dear friend and much loved personality right through the top end and arid and outback South Australia. The group up the top are a bunch of shearers. I do a lot of work in the shearing sheds, and hence a lot of paintings. And I'd always be able to get them during smoko and say, "Come out, you blokes, I want to take a photograph." And hence, and that painting is about the size of that whole screen, if not a bit bigger. But it was my great love for the local stuff in the local community. Great people, hard working. Nobody works harder than shearers, and I sit on the edge, well, not sit and stand. Well, they don't give me a seat because I work on the tables, but it's hard work. And it's interesting that shearing now is a whole different ball game. A lot of women shearing now, which is great to see, and good shearers. They all say about the women shearers, they're cleaner. They're cleaner. Not so many cuts with the women shearers, which is a great thing. Great people, and that's the McGuinness Men, which is a big painting. It's just up at Baz's and Gabby's at Gomersall. I work with this mob a lot, and Ron is a ex-Vietnam and you know, he's about 203 years old, I think, and they just keep working. There's a significant lack of young people coming into that industry, because especially up the top end, where are they? They're all in mining companies and earning big dollars. Shearers earn good money, but if you're a rousey like me, I don't earn anything because I pay my rent by working in the sheds. That's how I survive. And a grand bunch. Ron is he's just one of those lovely laconic characters. And my connection with the sheds also is that I draw and cartoon for the shearers every shearing time. They all get a cartoon. They all go home with a cartoon. So Ron says, You're bloody right, George. It's great because the only way I get serious is they know you're here and they get a cartoon when they go home. You know? So during that time, also, I was travelling around a bit, and Brenda and I went to Darwin. I spent a lot of time up there in my early years, went back a lot to Alice Springs, which I worked in a bit, and out to Uluru, Ayers Rock, known then, when you could climb Ayers Rock. And I totally agree now that it's best. That's my grandma, and that's me as a 14-year-old. So my last journey to Ayers Rock was when I climbed it, and I climbed the rock with Brenda, and we had a hire vehicle. I climbed the rock, got to the top of the rock, and got out, had a camera, took some photographs, changed the film in the camera, did all that, and got back down to the bottom of the rock, and I couldn't find the car keys. And I thought, oh, you idiot, George. Well, Brenda said something worse than that. But so I climbed the rock again, twice in one morning. And if anybody has ever climbed the rock, they'll know it's not an easy climb. It's severe. And I completely adhere to the fact that they don't climb it anymore. Well, I certainly wouldn't. So I went up the second time. So I'm going up, and the people who I saw when I was coming down the first time, they're all going, oh, you know. And so they're coming down the second time, and they see me coming back up again. And you don't feel like saying, yeah, I lost my car keys, left my car keys at the top. And I thought, no. I got to the top. I searched everywhere, because the top of Ayers Rock, there's big crevices that drop around hundreds of kilometres. And I looked around and looked around. I couldn't find the keys. So and I thought, no, this is bullshit. I sat down on this rock, and as I sat down, I heard this noise, and I thought, oh, what's that? I put them on the inside pocket of my jacket, which had a hole in it. I'd fallen through into the lining of my jacket. So I carried them up there for the second time. And try telling that your loved one. No, I had them all the time, darling. The longest walk I did was, I think it was to Woolworths, looking for deep heat for about a week. Anyway, it's one of those journeys. Secondly, and I was also at that time working for the Independent Weekly with a great guy called Hendrik Gout, one of the greatest set of editors, and we did lots of work, and around about this time too, and it was just lovely work to work with an independent newspaper. Hendrik was brilliant at what he did, and we still managed to get into a lot of trouble. One you'll see, I'm not sure, with Kevin Foley. Where's he? Paul, is he in there somewhere?
I've gone past him.
You gone past him?
I'll get there.
Yeah, and that's the little bloke alongside. People say, who's the little bloke alongside you? What's his name? No. That's, yeah, Press Club Awards, and Hendrik Gout's the person on the right. And a much loved friend still. A brilliant, one of the great journos. And
He rides a Motor Guzzi motorbike.
And he rides a Motor Guzzi motorbike. Absolutely. And as cartoonist now, I've got a lot of trouble with Kevin Foley.
Where's that?
Where is he? He's in there somewhere. There he is. Now, Kevin Foley, I did one cartoon of him. I'm not trying to trash the bloke or anything, but I drew him with a double chin. And he rang the editor and sent this letter a letter to the editor, which we of course published, and he said, I'm sick and tired of this cartoonist of yours giving me a double chin, which he had one. So every cartoon after that, I gave him another chin, and another chin, and he didn't like me at all. Anyway, he's a Polly, you know, and it's my job. I'm a cartoonist, for God's sake. So, and anyway, and he once took to me something chronic at a fish cafe in Goodger Street, and yeah, he was a delicate sort of person, you know. Anyway, now from here on, it's probably coming close to an end. I hope I'm not overstepping my time at all.
Hey, plenty. Still good.
All good?
Yeah.
And through all this time over the last so many years, I'm back and forth. I drive back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Hawker, Adelaide, Hawker, Adelaide. I was saying to somebody, I did one count the other week between Orroroo and Hawker. I counted 130 dead kills on the road over that length. And of course, when you're driving, as I do a lot through, it's not like driving and going, look at this landscape. You've got to be so switched on. There's so much wildlife, so much stuff on the side of the roads. They're all at the side of the roads over that last 6 months because there was no feed in the paddocks. The paddocks are completely bare. So you have to be so tuned in to every metre of what you're driving. And so yeah, you tire of it. And it's, yeah, and you choose your time to journey through that country. It's fraught with danger. And sadly, a lot of people don't realise that. A lot of city people don't get into the Flinders, or motorcyclists or whatever. They hit them and they come undone big time. That's another one from some of the stuff I did on COVID. That's the crossing the Delaware. There's a lot of good material from America at the moment, funnily enough. And that's some of the stuff I do for the Cattlemen's Association, and it's just one to bring. They're a very powerful organisation in the top end and across Australia, Cattlemen's. And the great thing about the Cattlemen's now, most of their management structure is run by very astute women who have been part of the industry. Women in part of, it's not about big blokes with big hats and out, you know, with dusty coats and jackets and strides. There are a lot of women who are all my managers now, who I have nothing but a great adoration for. And I go back with this and Trump. I'm still doing lots of painting exhibitions. I knew that had hit a note. Yeah. Because he's been so about wind power, you know. He's easy work, really. And so mostly now I'm still full time up at Glen Oak. I do a lot of work in shearing shed stuff. Probably next year I'm doing a project called the Great Outback Cartoon Muster, which I'm going to be working between Adelaide and Darwin, and visiting schools, shearing sheds, mining communities, and getting people to draw cartoons and talk about the issues they face in regional and remote Australia. And that exhibition will then end up in Darwin, and then travel, hopefully, across regional and outback South Australia and Australia. It's issues dealing with the real people out there and their thoughts, and they are, and especially, that's what I'm driving when I'm up there. But people who want to talk about it, because they do feel isolated, they feel like a long distance from anywhere else. They feel a long distance from the cities and from politics. These people are political people. There's no question about it. And they've been doing it tough, they do it hard, but they still have a great observance of what the real issues are that matter to those people. And that's where cartoon always works well, because it's a very accessible and palatable sort of medium. And I've gotten people and shearers and people cartooning about stuff. So I'm collecting all those cartoons as I journey through, and that'll come as a travelling exhibition later on in the next year or so. And there he is. Just a delightful man. And he used to work in our garden for us when I was living with Brenda up on Calton Road. Lindop Road. And I said, he'd come and work in the garden for us. I said, Brian, I want you to get rid of all that stuff and dig through that and get rid of that. And I'd go back into work at the desk, and 10 minutes later he'd come in and go, oh, what? I'd go, it's finished. He could dig, he could move a ton of dirt within about half an hour. And the most delightfully quiet, gentle man. And yeah. Dear Brian. I don't know who the other guy is, but just silly things. Yeah, Queen again. She said, stand behind me, George. Now that's the one I want to show you. That's this is Flo Dingo. She was a character I created and put posters up all around Hawker, Lindman, Cutler Station, people in the tourist places. And I thought it was just so easy. I saw that sign. It's amazing what you can do with a changing where the O is. So I'd close off one O and put the O on the other side. So it became road subject to Flo Dingo. And the people used to come in the pub and go, what's with the Flo, who's Flo Dingo? And I did it over a number of creek crossings, and I got told off severely for doing bad things to street signs. But funnily enough, everybody would stop and take a photograph. So Flo Dingo lives. He's so easy. He's just so easy. But you'll notice a lot of now I just do cutouts because every newspaper you got has got a photograph of Donald Trump. And yeah, supposing I'm not really well liked at the American Embassy. That's the cartoon from I won the Press Club Award, and I have at this point take great pride in telling Nicky Barnett, who was there, that I paid a great tribute to Craig Barnett, who was also one of my great supporters and pushed me because said, George, your cartoon is great, just keep doing it. Craig was a great bloke and part of the great Barnett clan. What else is there? This is work I do for a station called Willow Springs. I've just built about an 8-foot high cutout of an eagle. I built a huge wing which must weigh about 3 tonne at the entranceway to Willow Springs. And it's become one of those sort of iconic pieces of the Flinders Ranges. And they were the first people that put in the 4-wheel drive track. And everybody loves it, and a lot of the other locals were saying no, but you don't want people driving all over your country. But they did it with great finesse. Now all the station people have got 4-wheel drive tracks, funnily enough. And on a finishing note, that's me as I see myself probably, as you can tell, I've lost a lot of weight. Not. And it's just the joy I have with sending stuff through to people and engaging people in a really nice and a humorous way. We need the humour. So I want to just say, I want to pay a sort of a tribute and acknowledge some people over the years. The other person I had a great contact and joy of meeting was Philip Satchell from the ABC, who I knew Philip for a long time. We became really, really dear friends, and he thought I was quite silly. And I said, well, that's a great compliment. Thank you, Philip. And he eventually was just really quite sad. He lost his voice. He was one of the great, you never had conversations with you, Philip, you had interviews. Every conversation was like an interview. It was fantastic. He was a dear, dear man. Sadly gone. I also want to acknowledge, in recognition of Tony Piccolo, because I've heard they're actually building a miniature coliseum in recognition of his work in the local area. Karen Redmond, who has always been a great supporter. Alfie Skuse and his family. I was a great fan of Alfie, and a great footballer of a club called South Adelaide, who won a premiership about 300 years ago. Anyway, and the clan Harbison, Bill and all that gang I'm very close to. Bill, who's up searching for this poor darling kid. A great family, great bloke, and yeah. Hendrik Gout, who I've mentioned, and Winston K. Head, my mate, the taxidermist, who's been my rock and has kept me slightly sane. Well, less than slightly, but anyway. Of course, the Clelands, the Cliftons, the ABC, the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association, which I have great affiliation with, and of course, as I've said before, Baz and Gabby, Brian and Sandra, all these people, great neighbours, great people. This hall is full of great people. Malcolm, you sitting up there quietly, and Baz and Gabby. And I'm going to read you just one little thing. When I appeared in Portugal as the second prize winner in this international cartoon competition, a guy called Osvaldo Marcido de Sousa, he said, humour is an open door where the irreverent soul gets loose, breaking day-to-day stress, as well as it imposes the preservation of each one's basis in an ecological and healthy balance of the human mind survival. A simple smile can do better than an antidepressive. Laughing out loud is more invigorating than ecstasy. But beware of exaggeration, because the frontier between healthy humour and rudeness is often difficult to tear apart. And, like excessive sun, in the wrong hours, it's bad for you. And we all know that here. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, George. That was absolutely spectacular. Now, what we have now is question and answer time. Does anybody have a question for George while we've got him here?
Scary, isn't it?
Yes, we have one there now.
It's more of a comment, but I'm going to Marriottville High School.
You're going to Marrickville. Good place. They'll probably erase me off the honours list, but that's okay. It's good. The school is great. As I said, I've worked in hundreds and hundreds of schools. I've worked with at-risk kids, abused kids, tough kids, and it's the one joy, cartooning and drawing, kids just brings them so much joy. It's simple and it's not complex at all. It's just I was going to tell a story, but it's too sad. But anyway, I worked last couple of weeks ago for Wellbeing, I think Wellbeing Day, Wellbeing Week, and I sat there and drew to the students for about 2 or 3 hours, and they just took it on board, and you could see it, bringing smiles. Kids were just exhilarated by it. And I did one drawing of I think it was a dingo eating a hamburger. And this kid went, oh, that's pretty cool. So the next kid came along and said, oh, what would you like me to draw? I want a dolphin eating a hamburger. And it was, oh, what something else. They all suddenly had kids with these animals eating hamburgers. So, there's a rash of hamburger drawings right across the far north of South Australia. Thanks, mate. And good luck at school. And you're on holidays.
Yes, win a hamburger.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, we have.
Thanks for tonight, George. I've marvelled at your watercolour in the Exeter for years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you for the question. It's the great joy I have is painting. Cartoon to me comes really easily. Painting and watercolour is my great love. And that's when I sneak out and hide out in the scrub, which is easy for me. And watercolour is just, it's a medium that I'm normally an oil painter and on big scales, but now watercolour allows me to work on a smaller scale, but be more critical about the colours and the things I'm looking at. And it's just something that's easy to transport. Because a lot of the canvases and things I took out, but it just became enormously, not difficult, but cumbersome. But watercolour I love, and of course the softness. They say up that end of the Flinders is hard country, but you see it at the right time. The colours are just so subtle and beautiful, and that's my great love. I sat up there, it's a few months back now, and I take the gear out, the watercolours, and sit there on a board with good paper, good paint, no question about it. You've got to have the right materials, and I sit out there and just paint on the eastern side of Wilpena Power, And this day, I didn't get far enough off the road because I was sitting there and people would come and stop and go, take photographs. Oh, he's painting. So they'd come up, oh, that's beautiful, can I buy that? I go, no, it's a wedding present, it's a wedding present, you know. Get going again, another person, oh, that's beautiful, can I buy that? It was like, it's a great joy. But it's the having a great respect for your medium. And and the Flinders is a superbly, you know, beautiful place to place yourself in a landscape that is second to none. This is powerful landscape, and that's and a lot of the stuff is I've got access to lots of other station places that nobody else has got access to, which is the great thing. But I could be not selling. I have so many requests for that sort of work, especially the watercolours, because it's very transportable. And it's a very elegant medium. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Great one. Okay, once again, thank you very much, George. We appreciate you coming to the history team.
My pleasure.
On behalf of the team, we have a gift basket which we'd love to present to you. So thank you very much once again.
Oh my God, real food.
Now, while you're here, go up and have a cup of tea and a biscuit and have a look through some of George's collection he's brought here. And if there's any left up there, the sketches, kindly donate and something for you, Care. So that'd be great. So thank you all for coming. So thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
again, George. Thank you.